SVC Media.
Welcome to the iGaming Daily Podcast, analysing the news from the betting and gaming industry all over the globe, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market.
Last week, the UK Gambling Commission announced new rules regarding bonus incentives aiming to make promotions fairer and simpler for customers. From the 29th of December, UK gambling operators will no longer be allowed to use bonuses as a cross-sell tool, defined by the Commission as prohibition on bonus mixing. In addition, the Commission will impose a standard 10 times a wagering cap on all bonus requirements, a measure intending to protect customers from unfair and predatory terms. The update concluded with the Commission stating that it will revise the wording of Social Responsibility Code before the changes take place in December. Today, iGaming Daily examines the reaction to the Commission's newly determined bonus rules, a subject that continues to divide opinion across the industry. My name is James Ross, I am the Multimedia Editor at SBC, and I am joined by the two Teds, who, yet again, every time I'm with the two Teds, I need to think of a way to differentiate the two Teds. So, I'm going to keep it simple and use my nickname for Ted Orme-Claye, the editor at SBC News. Ted Orme-Claye, you are going to be OC. You're just going to be known as OC. Is that okay?
That's cool with me, mate. I've been called much, much worse.
I could be referred to as Ted OG.
Ooh. Let's do that. We'll go Ted OC and Ted OG. Okay, for this episode.
Okay.
Perfect. Ted OG, how have you been? How have you been since we last spoke?
Very well. A week of drama and a week of reactions by the industry. But we're going to get into that, no doubt.
We will get into that. And Ted OC, how have you been? I apologise before this podcast because I pretty much made you black out your whole room.
Oh no, I mean we've had to do this procedure before, so I'm used to being back in the back cave. For the podcast, my podcast hole. The black jumper hasn't helped either, has it? I needed to put on one of my more brighter items of clothing.
Do you know what? Instead of Ted OC and Ted OG, I should just call you Batman. And Ted, do you want to be Alfred or Robin? You should be Alfred, actually, because you were his mentor initially.
Oh, God, don't start.
And you are of the age of Alfred, I suppose.
No, it seemed like with this new job role, yeah. I think it's handy for him in the old people's home soon. So, yeah.
Long overdue, Ted OG. Long overdue. Mm-hmm. Now, before we get into the conversation at hand, now is probably an appropriate time to mention the main supporter of the iGaming Daily podcast, and that is Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. I won't degrade you anymore. I'll call you Ted OG, Ted OC. We'll stick with that. And like I said, we're talking about this new update from the UK Gambling Commission regarding kind of bonus mixing, as they call it. OG, my OG. Mm-hmm. What has been the kind of reaction? Sorry. For anyone who knows that reference, for fair play. What has been the general reaction to the UK Gambling Commission's announcement?
Well, on Wednesday, and when this dropped, I think it was kind of Wednesday lunchtime, we got it out there. And the reaction was all over the place. There was kind of this innate response that the way it was worded, especially with the term bonus mixing, people kind of thought that that was the end of their prohibited cross-sell, which hasn't happened. The other thing here is that I think it's people's kind of surprise that the white paper changes are still happening or still ongoing. And this was actually applied as a kind of a secondary measure of the consultation in its response to kind of fairness and social responsibility that must be applied to UK gambling. So I think people were kind of thinking that, they thought that the big decisions were kind of over for UK operators, which hasn't happened. This is a secondary decision in terms of bonuses and how the UK Commission is defining the use of kind of fair terms on promotions, on incentives, and on customer engagement. Again, changes are still being applied, and the reaction is, there's 1,000 opinions on bonuses, and this is regardless of the decision of the UKGC. But I think, on the whole, it's taken a decision, and we're going to see what comes out in December.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with Ted on a lot of this. I think like I said, the reactions have been very varied. If we were going to sit here and talk about every single stakeholder opinion on bonuses, we'd be here all week. But yeah, it did seem to start with that there were a lot of people who weren't really reading past the headlines and past the taglines and really sort of, taking this as like, oh, right, it's the end of cross-sell.
Who reads past headlines and taglines anymore?
I know, these days, I know, yeah. Like making my job seem very meaningless there, James.
Or on a podcast.
Yeah, good point. So yeah, but there are a lot of people who just sort of weren't reading past the initial sort of statements, I think, and were taking this as to be, like what Ted said, sort of the end of cross-sell between betting and casino content and products even. And if you look really in between the lines and look at the actual details, obviously it's not that at all. It's more of it's a restriction on it, but it's not the final nail in the coffin of cross-selling products.
No, I mean, cross-selling is important for this industry. Most, like, all UK operators rely on it in some way. And you've had other countries around Europe who have kind of introduced some restrictions in some way. You know, you've had Sweden who introduced their strict bonus regulations in 2019. The Netherlands did it in 2022 with banning all play and high wagering bonuses.
Yeah.
Like, they've done it, even companies in the UK market. You had Flutter who did a voluntary reduced wagering requirements through their Paddy Power, Betfair and Sky Bet products. So this isn't new. It's just a case of read behind the headlines. But with this, let's actually go more in depth behind that headline. And Ted OG, let's break down these technical terms, like specifically the bonus times 10 and, like we said, the cross-sell. Let's break them down.
Okay, so I think the bonus cap on X10 wagering is quite self-explanatory. From the 19th of December, all bonuses must have standardized wagering of 10x multiples on the deposit. So what the UK Gambling Commission is getting rid of, it's kind of mass multipliers on bonuses. They're requiring 50x on the wager. And it's also, that's going to be strengthened by the decision to kind of realign terms on how bonuses can be worded. I think the point of conflict is going back again to what Ted O.C. said. It's on the bonus mixing. Now, yes, your operator can give you a bonus, but it's restricted to one single category and it cannot be applied across other product segments. So if you get a bonus for casino, it must be spent on a casino segment product. You cannot then mix it in. So what you can't do is you can't give someone free money for placing a bet and that they can then go and spend it on a casino product or a bingo product or a poker product. So it's kind of putting kind of a segment on each kind of product category for bonuses.
Mm-hmm. And Ted O.C., why do you think these bonuses divide such an opinion among industry stakeholders?
Well, firstly, I think it relates back to what you mentioned earlier, that the idea of cross-selling is quite an important revenue stream for a lot of operators, both big and small. I'd say maybe particularly for the smaller ones who haven't got the brand visibility that a lot of the bigger sports books have got. The prospect of transferring customers between their different segments, between betting and casino, between betting and poker, bingo, whatever, like Ted referred to, is quite valuable for them as a way of maximizing customer value, I guess, throughout their business. So there's that element to it, and bonusing is often seen as, it's quite a useful promotion of attracting people in, of like a sign-up bonus. So that's what the first opinion is. The counter opinion to that, though, and this is one that's been expressed by a lot of people over the past few years in the context of the Gambling Act Review, particularly reformists, reform advocates, but again, like you said, people within the industry as well, is that sometimes these bonuses can be, well, for want of a better word, predatory. For the most part, with a lot of the biggest brands that we've talked about and the well-established ones, the regulated ones, the trustworthy ones, a bonus is pretty straightforward. It's, you deposit a tenner, you get 20, 30, 40 pounds free bet, or maybe they might put it around a sporting event where it would be, I don't know, ahead of the Grand National. You come in, bet a tenner, we'll give you £40 free bets on the Grand National Day races or something like that. But if you go and look at a lot of other companies, particularly, and often obviously this then starts falling outside of the UKGC's remit, but a lot of the, I guess, want a better term, I'm going to use that word a lot today, a lot of sort of like dodgy crypto casinos and things like that. You find some pretty wild and what seem to be very predatory sign-up offers with things like no cash back until you've spent £100, £200 and things like that. And you often find them across some of the more, less visible, like, unsanitary kind of brands, I guess. And that's been getting a lot of criticism. A lot of people who have been calling for reform in this country see that as an example of predatory marketing tactics, predatory customer acquisition by the industry. And then you've also got the other stakeholders you mentioned, like with Flutter's brands within the industry itself, who I think have kind of taken a step back and looked at bonuses and bonus.
SBC Leaders connects the gambling industry's top-tier operators and associations to share the best ideas, collaborate on solving the biggest issues, and push innovation throughout the betting and gaming industry. If you're an operator and want to join the discussion, visit sbcleaders.com for more information.
Promotions and realise that it's not all, that there are concerns about it, and it's not great PR a lot of the time for these practices to continue in the way that they have done, and like you said, James, they've taken that step themselves way ahead of the UKGC making its decision here, and decided to move on from it. And I think if we want to talk about some of the reactions as well, I think some of the reactions I've heard over the past couple of days have almost kind of expressed that opinion as well. Like, it's time the industry moved on and modernised and was more responsible in the way it carries out bonus promotions.
Mm-hmm. Talking of moving on, we do have to move on to a quick ad break. But when we do come back, we're going to be we'll continue on this story, and we'll look at kind of if the UKGC could have actually implemented some tougher restrictions and how this may impact kind of customer strategy. So please stay tuned, and we'll be back just after this ad break. Welcome back. We continue on the UKGC's bonus story, and as I mentioned before the ad, we're going to look at if these UKGC implementations could have had tougher restrictions against them. Ted OG, we'll come to you because I'm sorry, we already mentioned kind of like previous markets who have had tough restrictions against them.
Sure.
Could the UKGC have followed suit because they have a case and example of what works and them doesn't work?
Look, I think we got to be very careful here with the language.
Okay.
Because I don't view this as an outright ban on bonuses or a restriction. I think this is more of a determination on how bonuses should be applied by operators. And there has been a discussion about what should be kind of standardized terms for the use of a bonus. Now, many leaders in our industry view the bonus as very much like an archaic marketing tool that is carried on in the industry. And it's gone to this place where it's now a race to the bottom in terms of what promotions you use. And it's kind of like the last kind of, your last incentive to push a player to sign on. The other thing here is that we're now in the era of kind of cost controls for the industry. So yes, bonuses carry a price. They're also open to abuse. You have, especially if you're tier one operators, you will have teams looking into this who don't necessarily like the players that are being brought on by bonuses. So that's where you kind of get this like deemed like mixed reaction. Now, I think that this decision, and looking back at the consultation and what was referred back to the UKGC, is that it's also been taken in with the response of the industry, which is divided on the actual final application of what a bonus structure should be like. The 10x wager, I think, makes sense across the board. The application of bonus mixing, I think that kind of harms your likes of your white label turnkey providers, and also your products, your kind of lesser product segments like bingo, in which they need kind of cross sell onto your slots and your gaming platforms. So yes, there is an impact, but I wouldn't call it an out and out kind of restriction. I think it's more of a determined play by the UKGC.
Mm-hmm. Anything on that, OC, or should we move on?
Yeah, I think Ted's kind of hit the nail on the head really there. I'd agree that I don't think it shouldn't really be phrased as a ban on bonuses or a restriction on bonuses. It's more of a clarification of where the industry is going to take these products and how to where the industry is going to take these promotions and how it's going to handle them moving forward in a manner that is more responsible for the industry, more sustainable for it as well, I think, in encouraging more, player health and things like that. There's often a saying that we'll have heard thrown about a lot in our role in the media, but also you hear it in the event side of our business as well. People often say like the best type of player you want is a happy player, because they're not going to be not a happy player, a healthy player. Healthy player is a happy player, something like that. I don't know. I can come up with a good tagline for the BGC here. It's healthy players are sustainable players, aren't they? The ones who that aren't going to be affected by gambling harm, who ultimately are going to burn out, are going to face problems, and are going to have to leave. You want people who are in control, who will return and be a good customer to you. And I think that is some of the reactions I've seen to that. I think that this is a potential. It might be a move in that direction by segmenting the bonuses.
I mean, again, it's also, look, this is a year of application for changes in UK gambling, and you can kind of see this come into play with the lowering of stake limits. And if you tell me which is going to have a bigger impact, no doubt the stake limits. Yeah, that's going to be a much, much bigger adjustment.
Yeah, huge.
I think coming into kind of H2 this year, I won't be surprised if your PLCs and your tier ones start to really scale back on promotion or just revise that whole segment.
Mm-hmm. And how do you think operators are likely to react, and how might this actually affect their customer strategy? Because again, if you go to Sweden, who imposed their strict bonus regulations and made it tighter for one-time offer per customer, once it happened, they saw a decline in customer acquisition rates. Players started to mitigate to unlicensed sites, and regulated operators started to adopt by shifting towards more loyalty-based rewards and kind of personalized retention strategies. Are we going to see something similar to this with the UK? How are the operators going to react to this? From a customer strategy point of view, and go to the OG on this one.
It's hard to tell. I mean, I don't want to kind of compare the UK gambling like for like with Sweden or what's happened in the Netherlands. And again, their kind of application's been a lot more restrictive and a lot more kind of imposed directly as a condition of licensing on how they apply bonuses, which hasn't happened in the UK. Strategy, I mean, I think anyhow, the majority of operators from pretty much April onwards are going to have to revise their marketing strategies, just because there's going to be so much kind of realignment happening in UK gambling. So I think that's going to happen regardless of the bonuses. I think you're going to kind of break down the operations of operators of how marketing is applied in UK gambling. I think it might have an impact on the affiliates and how they promote individual operators to their audiences. Also, again, going back to what type of operator are you and what is, your operating framework. I think it will impact turnkeys and the bingo segment. But I think, again, it just points to kind of more revisions. I think like what we saw with the gambling compliance checks, the best prepared companies will come out on top.
Mm-hmm. Maybe Sweden is that extreme example. Maybe let's play devil's advocate for a UK example. We mentioned Flutter when they voluntarily reduced wagering requirements. Yeah. They revealed that it actually had a minimal impact on revenue, and they kind of shifted their focus to retention kind of through that personalized engagement rather than high risk promotions. So there you go. There's an example of kind of a UK how it. But then
I'd flip it back to you. I mean, like James and Ted, your customers, your consumers, do you care that much about a £20 bonus?
It doesn't incentivize me too much, but at the same time, if someone's giving me a free bonus, I'm going to take that. But then it's always spun by free bets, and I'm never really intrigued by free bets myself, to be honest. Or returns are through free bets.
The thing I'd say there from the customer standpoint as well, both I'm going to take this into his customer and the industry. The customers will always be interested in placing a bet. If you're someone who enjoys betting on sports, you're gonna be interested in a flutter on the football, on the horses, on the boxing, whatever. Like this, it's not like customers are going to be looking at this and going like, "Oh my god, well I'm not going to be able to get a free bonus on the slots and the and my football betting now.
I want my free £20
yeah,
slot bonus on Jurassic World. Right? I want that now."
Yeah, it's not like people are going to just go, right, that's it, I'm done. I'm never going back to whoever, Paddy Power, Bet365, whoever they like to bet with because of that. Like, and the other thing as well is, I mean, this industry, if we're just talking in the UK context, James, you've talked about Sweden and obviously that being one of the more extreme examples. But in the UK, like this industry has faced regulatory changes, quite big ones that are way more significant than this, in my opinion. And still, year over year, remains highly valuable. It turns over significant GGY and GGR. Various companies are making record profits. Like you had the one of the big examples I remember would be the 2019 slot stake reduction in retail betting, right? Because at the time I was working in betting shops at that time, and we were building up to that, and it was quite a big thing, making sure all the customers knew about it, that right, the games that you enjoy playing are going to be changed from whatever day it was. I think it was April 2019. And then after that, things just carried on as normal. They just weren't able to stake as much. And now we've got that applying to the online slots, which Ted mentioned earlier, which will be far more significant. You've got the opt-in and opt-out marketing requirement as well, which is probably going to be a lot more of a significant blow to operator marketing than this bonuses sort of thing. But you have all these you've had various regulatory changes over the years, and after them all, the same companies have always been are still making revenue. They've still got customers. They remain resilient, and customers always remain interested. I think, maybe I'm being cynical.
Going back to the reactions, and this kind of panic that cross-sell is over, and we won't be able to have like competitive bonuses anymore. But I think, look, it's 2025, and if you're an operator and your marketing strategy or your acquisition strategy revolves around issuing bonuses, I think you're in a very, very, very big trouble, because you got to have more tools than that, right? And especially if you compare to it's such a hyper-saturated market, so aggressive on pricing, like your player knows what's up. So this idea that the bonuses are there as a determining tool, I'm not buying it.
Mm-hmm. We could talk a bit further on this, but we are out of time. So I'm going to wrap up this podcast. Ted OC, Ted OG, thank you so much for joining us on the discussion today. There is more information to listeners or viewers if you're on YouTube out there. Please click on the links in the description below, which will take you to Ted Menmuir's article on this, and also to Ted OC's. Sorry, I called you Menmuir. Ted OG, I'll stick with it. And Ted OC's SBC news site, where they'll be covering this throughout as things kind of develop. But I've been James Ross. This has been iGaming Daily, and thank you for listening. Tune in next time.
Thank you for listening to today's iGaming Daily podcast, supported by Optimove, the #1 CRM marketing solution for the iGaming market. If you want to find out more about some of the subjects raised today, feel free to explore any of the sites in the SBC News network, or check out the latest edition of the SBC Leaders magazine. Happy reading.